So this is B Shifter, and we are here for a Leadership Thursday with Nick, Terry, and Vance. And today we're just going to talk about some current event stuff that we've been talking about offline. And one of the questions that I get as a fire chief, and I'm sure you've gotten, Terry, and it's something you had to deal with, Nick, is what are we going to do on violent incidents? And right now it's all the rage for the fire service to start dressing like they are going to battle somewhere. I'm seeing tactical gear. I'm seeing flak jackets. I'm seeing these helmets, the ballistic helmets, the little SWAT microphones that come down. We don't have them in our department. We've avoided it up to this point. In concert with the police chief, our police chief advises us. I mean, he's the expert in this. But where did you sit as a fire chief with several organizations when it came to going to these violent incidents, and how do we protect ourselves?
Yeah, so there's a couple different areas. The first area is that, like in Glendale, we have SWAT medics, and the SWAT medics are assigned with the police officers on an incident, and they're there to provide any kind of medical support to the police officers. They are They train every week with the police department. They dress like the police department. They look like the police department. They're assigned to the police department, and in fact, the grant that the police officers have signifies they need to have a paramedic. So that is a specialty that these guys, we have 2 of them right now, and they do all that with the cops. That is one thing. That's not the everyday firefighter. So that's very specific, right?
And a question about a SWAT medic. What is their mission? What are they specifically there for?
So these SWAT medics, and it's already paid off in Glendale a few years ago. I think it was 3.5, 4 years ago. They had a police officer who was serving a warrant who was shot. And we had our medics there, and they treated the police officer. The bad guy got shot too, and he didn't get treated by the SWAT medics, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if they would have had time, I'm sure they would have treated him also, but they were too busy with the police officers. So their primary role is to be a part of that team and to support the police officers. But you got to think about when these guys do that, their specific training and everything they do assigns them to that position. They're one of the positions on the police team, which is different from everyday firefighters being out there on fire engines and responding to incidents. So on these kind of things, they'll use those guys for barricade or for serving warrants or something. That's very, very specific. And when I first arrived as a fire chief in Oceanside, they were doing something like that, but it wasn't controlled enough, and I kind of ended it. I said, no, we're not going to do that. The guy was wearing tactical. I saw a firefighter in camouflage, and I said, what is that? And they explained to me what it was. I didn't like it, and I said, no, we're not. I talked to the police chief, as a matter of fact, because you said something very important, is your police chief agreed with you. I talked to the police chief there, and he goes, no, we really don't want that guy on there. It doesn't fit for us. He kind of got attached to us somehow. I said, okay, so I was able to kind of end that. In Glendale, this is a very specific role where the police chief and I agreed to this, which is also different from Houston, where the police chief says, no, we're the popo. We shoot people. You're the firefighters. You save people. And he was very specific about that. When I arrived in Glendale, one of the things that had occurred, and I can only speak to my personal experience, so if I say I a lot, I apologize for being I, but I am I. Mm-hmm. I am I.
And you are he.
And I am he. So when I got to Glendale, they had a group of people that they were moving in the vests, and they were going to give our regular firefighters vests. And I said, no. So I called the police chief at the time, and I asked her, I said, what do you think about firefighters with vests on? She goes, you're not coming into our scene, so I don't know why you have vests. And I said, okay, well, how would you like some vests? And she said, oh, I'd love to have those vests. So I had my assistant chief, hey, why don't you pack those vests up and give them to the police chief? And I said, if you ever find any hose laying around or nozzles that you guys have, would you send them our way? We'll take any acts.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a different menu of responsibility. So we could talk about, so with that out of the way, we can start talking a little bit about vests. So
I get around a lot, and I'm noticing that this is a trend. And typically what I notice is the vests are sitting in a compartment on the truck and they're not really wearing them. And I notice in some departments, they're hand-me-downs. So the police department used them for a number of years. And so I'm asking my police chief about this. Well, there's a shelf life for these vests, and I think it's a 5-year shelf life. And they also need to be fitted for the individual. Yeah. So you can't have just 4 generic vests sitting in the engine that everybody throws on if they're feeling threatened. You need to be fitted for it. And then the third thing the police chief said, for it to be effective, you got to wear it all the time. And then we start digging into where actually firefighters are getting shot. And the greater percentage of the time, now I don't know if this has changed in the last couple of years, because certainly the last couple of years has been more violent than probably any time in the last 20 years. But most firefighters are shot on the scene of a fire. That's where most fire, and you're in turnout gear already. So you're not going to have a ballistic vest on under that. But
no, there's been some fire departments across the country who's tried to practice wearing vests, and they get their turnouts on and they cook themselves. I mean, that's a pretty easy intelligence test there. But that's the thing about vests. And when I have firefighters ask me, because there's always firefighters that they have this passion about vests. They want vests for whatever reason. And it's like, okay, so why? Cops have them. Okay, so when did they put them on? When they leave the house, right? When they put their uniform, anytime they have their uniform on, even if they go to the coffee shop on the way to work, when they're in a uniform and they're representing themselves as a cop, they have a vest on, because bad guys like to kill cops, right?
Right.
So they got that vest on. So when would we put ours on? We would have to wear them all the time. It makes no sense. The other thing is, you talk to a lot of guys, is that, the vest only protects a small part of your body, right? The vital organs, I get that. But really bad guys will probably be able to figure out how to hurt you in many different ways. So to me, vests don't make any sense for the regular firefighter on the street, just with the job we do. And if you see how firefighters get hurt in violent incidents, we have a Houston firefighter on staff here, Jeff King. He could probably talk to us more about the firefighter in Houston. They're at a working fire. He bends down to wake up a homeless guy. The guy, I don't know why, but he just reaches up with a sharp object and hits the firefighter in the eye, and the firefighter loses his eye.
Oh,
that's a violent incident, right? Yeah. Vests wouldn't have helped that. Mm-hmm. So, violent incidents are not all created equal. And when these guys start talking about vests, it's almost like when we first started talking about Mayday, where every Mayday is going to be run exactly the same. If we figure out how to run a Mayday, we could run all Maydays. Well, it doesn't work like that. If we get a better RIC bag, we'll figure out how to do better with Maydays. So better body armor does not help on violent incidents, I don't think.
And that's certainly, we talk about all the time now. I believe the body armor is a what solution to a why problem. Why are you in that predicament to begin with? Why are you in a situation where you feel like you need it? And a lot of times you're going into these calls then, if that's the case, where there's no code for. There was no police that went in and saved the scene before we go in. If we're feeling threatened, that's the cops doing their job. They're going to go take care of the bad guys so then we can go render service. How much of that did you see during your time? I mean, was there ever a push for the ballistic armament?
Yeah, there were people that wanted they wanted to be cops, basically. I want a gun. I want this. I want that. Firefighters are equipped with the proper protective gear for the hazard zones we work in, right? Mostly fire and EMS related. You got some hazmat, you got some TRT. Well, with all that gear comes training that goes with it. So you're trained in how to use that safety gear, what its limits are, and how not to exceed those. So we think it's as simple as just giving firefighters, oh, here is a helmet and here's a vest. Now you're a cop. They're all playing Halloween is what it is. So there's no adults to say, no, I'm with the Houston police chief. He said it. They're the cops. We're the fire department. The cops ain't calling for helmets and SCBAs. They're not, well, when we get there first, we're going to search that burning house. Well, no, you're not. We're going to be right there and don't worry about it. Stay the hell out of the house. That's because you wear a polyester uniform and vinyl and it's going to flash and it melts in you. And we could show you 20-year-old pictures of cops that did that. They're the first person the fire department saves. So nobody's figured that part out. And then the calls I went to, I used the command system to protect the firefighters from the violent call. So we would stage in remote places until PD had done what they were doing. Now, see, we have all these relationships with other fire departments that come in. We have staging procedures. So if you go to a fire on the border of Glendale and Phoenix, you could end up with 6 different fire departments there. And they could all play a role in that. The police didn't have that type of relationship. And most of the violent incidents I went to that were really confusing is there was some cop from 8 cities away that chased somebody into the city of Phoenix, and then they started playing war in front of a Circle K or a Kmart or some occupied thing. And so we asked our Phoenix counterparts what's going on. They said, we have no idea. We got a sheriff and then a patrol person from Fountain Hills or wherever the hell it was. We don't know what they're doing here. We just know there's gunfire. We don't have the same. So there was no hookup. And you thought, well, this is. So it wasn't. And the Phoenix cops would tell us, no, it ain't safe for us to go in there, let alone you guys. Stay the hell out. So that's what I spent my career doing, is saying, no, that's the police call. This is a fire call. The two of them don't mix. We support each other, but we don't get in each other's hazard zones.
Yeah, the problem is any incident could become a violent incident, right? I mean, that could happen any time.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
if you're gonna, we are exposed to. We go to where our customers need us. We go in their houses. We go in the streets. We go into buildings, wherever they're at, and that's how we deliver a service.
Well, Terry, but that's what those guys are telling you. Any call could be a violent incident, and then I have it right there. And you think, you get back to your thing. When do you put it on?
Well, so what we did, here's something that worked really well in Glendale. So we had an apartment complex, a very large, well-known apartment complex. Nick, not far from where you and I hung out and grew up. And it went bad. And when you go into this apartment complex, there's one way in and one way out, and it's one of those large with 20 or 30 buildings. And one of the buildings, probably not that many, probably 12. And they're alphabetical buildings. J building, the firefighters refer to as J block. Right? When you go in there, it's going to be dangerous for us. So we met with the cops and we said, hey, this is a dangerous area. What do you guys think? They go, yeah, don't go in there. Well, we have to go in when somebody calls because there's a couple good people that live in there that aren't going to try to kill us or not hopped up on drugs or whatever. They said, okay, well, call us anytime you go in. When you guys go in, dispatch us. We'll go in together. We'll do that in a way that we won't waste a lot of time, and we'll protect you guys. So we started developing a relationship with our PD with that. Like, this is a hazard area. The cops wouldn't go in there alone.
Well, we did that in Phoenix with the shelter during my career. As we said, no, fire companies cannot go into the shelter anymore. What you have is like 10 acres of tents. It looks
worse
like
now.
Oh, it is. It's gotten much worse. Everything has, and they've hired fewer people over the last 10 years to take care of it. It's a shit sandwich, man. So, but it got to the point that said, no, fire companies cannot go escorted into these areas anymore because it's as much for their protection as ours. Because if Engine 2 was attacked by homeless people, we were going to attack back.
Yes.
We would defend ourselves. And we thought, we don't need vests to do that with you folks. So it was kind of just staying out of places where you knew there was going to be trouble, and then the police would go in first. Well, the police said the same thing. We don't go in there.
Yeah.
Well, if you ain't going in there, I ain't going in there. He says, no, bring them out. and their staff and the rest, and this is the way we're going to do it from now on. And you think, okay, so Engine 3, Engine 2, Engine 6, they all knew the routine. Every time they went to the shelter, we park here, and then this is where we meet them.
So if people that are listening, if you have a specific address or a geographical area that is unsafe, then you need to get with your cops and you talk about how we're going to respond to those areas. The other thing too, I don't think we do a really good job. We got to get better at this. Is situational awareness for firefighters, right? So you got a fire captain. Here's an interesting thing that happened is that Phoenix was going to go to a 2-person response unit to kind of handle minor type incident calls. And they said that they need a full crew. City says, why do you need a full crew? Because we need a supervisor to watch out for these guys, what's going on. Like there has to be an adult who's looking around everybody should be looking around, but you need to identify an adult, train them. Here's some situational awareness. Watch for things. Look for movement. Watch the people in the house if you're on an EMS call. Watch the patient. I mean, we've got to start getting better at training our guys to do that. Now, there's always that surprise that could happen, but there's some things that we could learn where maybe we can spend some time with cops and they can tell us what kind of movements bad guys do or how to kind of better identify that. I think most firefighters know if you got a few years experience, you can almost predict who the knuckleheads are going to be when you pull up. Mm-hmm. You pull up to an EMS call and you're headed into the house. You're like, okay, let's keep on our heels, man. Right? Let's get ready. Here's an exit. Fire captain could talk to his crew, guys. This is a little rough here. Here's our exit plan. When I say go, we're going. If we don't feel comfortable going in, then the plan is we're staying on the truck and we're waiting for a cop and we're going in with a police officer.
Our cops teach us defensive tactics, and it's only for us to get out of the situation, not to continue to, we're surprised by something, how to defend ourselves and then get out.
We were very good at de-escalating things. We didn't take stuff personal. We get there and, you would expect it. It's just kind of based on the area we worked in. You're going to go in and there's going to be some chaos from time to time, like socially and with people. And you just can't get over and outperform just being nice to people and saying, no, you can't do that to us and knock it off right now. And they typically would. And if they wouldn't, they were abhorrent somehow. And the people around them recognized that. And so, like, their homies would start to take care of them. And then when the cops got there, they became invisible because, you did not jack with those people when they got there. It was going to change things for you drastically, good, bad, or otherwise. And I thought, that is not what I do for a living. I don't whoop the shit out of people. No. So I don't want that. And I think when we militarize ourselves with the way we dress, and see, because that goes into their attitudes. All the people in my department that cried for that were bullies. I'm going to do this, and then I can do what I need to. They would feel better about themselves. It was about them. It wasn't about the work at all. So you tell them, no, we're not doing that. We're the fire department. We're going to just be nice to people and show up. And that seemed to take care of most of it, most of the time.
I sat with Bruno at lunch one day, and we were sitting there, and it was a Mexican food restaurant downtown, and there was a group of firefighters sitting at one table. They'd come in, they'd just done some training, and they were sitting over there, and there was a group of police officers at another table, and he says, Terry, look at that group. The firefighters are having fun and kind of look like they're smiling at people and talking to the waitress. He goes, look at those guys. He goes, what do you think? They looked mad. They looked angry. They weren't approachable. I'm not saying all police officers are like that. I said, but these guys were like that. But they have a different mentality when they leave work in the morning, right? It's an us versus them. If they make a bad mistake, they could get killed very easily from a bad guy.
Well, and they put out a wall of intimidation. I mean, that's what they're advertising.
But they have a different menu of responsibility, right?
Mm-hmm. So they got a gun.
Right? So I don't think we want to be cops. In that scenario I said with the vest when I first got to Glendo, I said, I'll buy them all tennis shoes. We'll run like hell.
So we don't want to be political here, but this begs another question. And this was particularly the rage a couple of years ago in the Midwest. I don't know where it is right now, but there are fire chiefs who are advocating their crews carrying guns now. And there's some services out there that are doing it.
I would not call those people at my house if I needed help. I don't want armed paramedics at my house. I'm not interested.
My problem is, and it's the same thing as I had a neighboring fire chief who had the police department ask for bunker gear because they were going to dress up as firefighters to serve a warrant.
No.
And I said, all that's going to do is make us a target then. If we continue to do things like that, we're going to be a target. If we're carrying weapons, we're going to become a target. This is an unarmed service. We're not an armed service. We're not capable of being an armed service. And if there's even just a percentage of people within a community that are doing the same work we're doing and dress the same way that we're dressing and calling themselves the fire department, and they're carrying weapons, it's going to make all of us a target.
Exactly. No, 20 years ago, at Fire Station 24 in the west side of town, it's a pretty rough area. There, next to that fire station is a apartment complex with a lot of bad people living in it, right? And the cops called us and called the fire captain and said, "Hey, we're going to serve a warrant. We want to gather in your parking lot at the fire station." No. You can't do that. We can't even be the staging location for police officers. You guys, you can come in, you can do your paperwork anytime you want. We'll give you a piece of pizza, a glass of water. You can't use this as a staging location when that apartment complex is going to learn that this is where you came from. Because now we're gonna need to put a bigger wall around.
Well, we live here. You don't. This is just like your jumping off point to do what you're going to do in that apartment complex. We're part of the community here, pal. That's
it's interesting. So the police, I don't know if he was a captain or I never really got the ranks figured out, but he was very nice. He said, "Okay, we get it. We'll meet at the Denny's." I mean, it was no big deal. We'll just go 2 blocks down the road and we'll meet it. I said, "Yeah, you guys can't do this here. We can't. You guys come visit us anytime you want, but we can't be you and you can't be us."
We ain't the cops.
The greatest urban legend about this came out of the North Hollywood shooting, the bank robbery. Mm-hmm. Remember those two Russians? Those 2 Russians, full body armor, AK-47s, and they went to for what, an hour?
Oh yeah,
robbed a bank, and then they proceeded to disrupt Los Angeles for the next hour. It's said that LA City fire truck drove through that scene accidentally in the very beginning because you didn't know what was going on and they were so mobile. And they said those guys were shooting. They shot at every moving thing. They were pinned down. Nobody could mess with them. And they said when that truck drove through the incident scene, they both lowered their guns, waited for it to clear, and then went back.
You just gave me the chills.
No, man. Yeah. Now, if those guys would have been around a militarized fire department, they would have put clips into that truck. Now, somebody may do that today because there's just the shitberg people. Anyone can own a gun here. The crazier you are, the better sometimes.
Yeah.
So I understand it's a unique problem, but we all face it. I mean, just going out today, putting firefighters in ballistic vests is not going to fix the gun problem that exists in this country.
Yeah. So just moving on to that, taking that conversation to the next piece. If what works really well, I think is what we've adopted, is that if you have a school shooting or a shopping mall shooting or something, the IC for the fire department and whoever the police department is should meet and talk about what their plans are and share their plan. Here we get on the same, we have a radio, we can listen to what they say, they can listen to what we say. We stay outside the hazard zone. We ask them to provide some protection for us in a casualty collection point, if you've heard of that. Mm-hmm. We don't do any of this rapid, RFT?
Extraction,
yeah, we don't do the rapid force protection and go in with them. They don't want us in there. They said, no, you guys wait out here. We'll find you a place. We'll keep you safe, and we'll bring patients to you, the casualty collection point. So what happens is you're doing something. If you tell firefighters that, well, we're not helping enough. Yeah, you are. You're there. You're going to treat, triage, transport, but you're not extricating at that point. The police officers have to. In fact, the police officers will probably pass somebody who's injured to shoot the bad guy. Is what they're doing nowadays.
Yep. That's what they should do.
They step over the injured to go kill the bad guy, just the way we put water on the fire. Right?
Eliminate the threat.
We eliminate the fire. They eliminate the threat. They don't want us in there.
No. We don't belong in there.
If you're looking for a good program and you're kind of thinking about this rescue task force, I'm probably pissing you off, but I don't send firefighters in with cops. We get our triage bags, we get our treatment area, we get our ambulances all staged. We wait for them to bring the patients out, and we transport them from there. It works very well.
Terry, remember the Rodeo Chetasky fire?
Yeah.
Way back when. The biggest wildland fire in the country at the time. It's just enormous. Like 3 wildland fires in Arizona all met. And we sent a first alarm to the city of Show Low, which was kind of the biggest city that was threatened by the fire. And so we move urban structural fire companies that have zero wildland training or knowledge into the fire stations to protect the city and keep the fire stations open and respond to like fire department calls. And while they're doing that, wildland firefighters are clearing the area and doing work around to protect the city. Well, our crews kept trying to go over and help them with chainsaws and doing wildland work because they're just sitting there. And it was one of our BCs his job was to drive around and stop that from happening. He said, "Stay out. You're screwing their shit up and you're not doing what you're supposed to do." "Yeah, but we feel bad because we're just sitting here." He says, "You're all making overtime." He explained the benefit package to him. Sit here and just cook food for them or do this. You got to stay in service. So even something like that, similar work, we thought, no, there's people to take care of that. And this is the division of labor. You're operating within an IC's incident action plan.
We do type 4, type 5 fires and EMS calls.
Exactly. If there's a structure on fire, those wildland guys are going to stay on their side of the fence and you're going to go on the other side. That's the way it works here. They don't have SCBAs, you do. So now it made even less sense to extend that same philosophy with the police. Oh, we're going to help the police. No, you're not. If you want to help somebody, let's go help the sewer department. Yeah. We can jump in and help them fix the seals. You want to do? Oh, no, I'm not going to do that. That doesn't come with a gun.
I've worked with 3 police chiefs, or actually more than 3 police chiefs, but 3 different cities. And not one of those police chiefs wanted us to participate in their "we're going to go kill the bad guy inside the building" scenario.
Yeah.
There's always wait out here. We don't want you firefighters to get hurt.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with the police chiefs I've worked with. And another notch on that, I guess, and we'll see where this part of it goes, is the police chief called me a couple of weeks ago and said, "How do you feel about embedding a social worker with the fire department versus the police department for de-escalation of mental health calls?" And I said, "No, you guys are the ones that de-escalate the mental health calls. So whoever you need to do that, you guys continue doing that, because there's a push for some fire departments to get in that business because people are now feeling threatened when they see the police department. They don't want, they want to minimize what the police department's doing. So they don't want to send, there's a certain move to not send the police on mental health calls. And these mental health calls, a lot of times they're people who are either threatening people or they're threatening their own. My police department, they're really good at de-escalating, and they really do a good job on that. They don't come in. A lot of them have master's degrees. That's a very smart force. And
they're more social workers than cops.
They really are.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you guys, I don't have enough staff to begin with. You guys keep doing that. I'm not going to chase down the mental health calls right now. I mean, I don't think we belong there. I mean,
a million years ago here is the police got a federal grant to do domestic violence, mental health counselors at the scene of domestic violence calls. And that was the start of our AR program in Phoenix. The police didn't have the capacity, and we said we'll house them in our stations, and we ended up with 3 or 4, some nights 5 or 6 maybe, AR vans, alternative response, and they would go to like the mental health thing or a customer patient that there really wasn't a place to take them, but they couldn't stay at home. So, and you had an EMT, a therapist, like a licensed therapist, and then a trainee therapist. So there were usually 3, and they were not intimidating people at all. They were social workers. So they needed, if you had somebody that was upside down, you had to have the cops there to do that piece of it. That was a great service for us because, I mean, when they were in service, they were gone all the time. They were constantly in use.
So those units I like to call in addition to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? In addition to a fire response, in addition to a police response, not part of our response. We got a very specific role. So in Glendale, we have a crisis response team, and they'll go out, and their job is to kind of help the families after a fire or help the family after a tragic incident with their, they have a kid that's killed or injured or whatever, and they're so good at that. They're wonderful at that. They don't really work like at crisis response for the firefighters, right? That's not part of their role. Their role is to help the customer, but they're in addition to, and they do a great job. But I think you made, I would agree with you on that. That's probably not surprising, but yeah, I don't think we need to add a layer on what the firefighter's doing at the task level right there.
I think that's a good in addition to, because we do a follow-up program. So either after a fire, we do the whole after the fire thing, or if our crews go to a call and they're like, they know they're first due and it's a repeated 911 call, like we're always doing a lift assist on Mrs. Smith, they check a box, and then one of our public educators go out and they evaluate the home. They're like, hey, they make an appointment. They come out and they're like, hey, we've been out there a few times in the last couple of weeks. We want to come by and visit you and just see how you're doing. Then they get out there and see, okay, you need some grab bars. You've got carpet all over the place. And in some cases, you need the social worker to come out because they're people who really shouldn't be living by themselves. Or, we have a couple sometimes that they're, in their 80s and abusing alcohol and falling downstairs. So you want to get some help. But a lot of times, our follow-up person can hook them up with the resources that the 911 calls then stop. But that's in addition to. That's not an active response. That's not embedded in anything that we're doing. That's a follow-up program, the next day or the next week. So
years and years ago, we talked about this. The labor group had a wonderful idea, and it was a connector program. So if you got a firefighter and he was off on an injury, industrial or otherwise, I think, and they were going to be off for months and months and months, they had the opportunity to go work in a dispatch center, and they had a list of all the resources you can call. So they would connect people to where they can get help. Because back then we didn't have a system to go there. But I think that's what our CR folks do now, is they are crisis response. They actually go there and they will connect you with all these resources. They have so many resources available, and they're really smart. Like I'll tell them about, what about this? And I go, oh yeah, we would connect them to boom. Well, what about this? Oh yeah, we connect it. They know exactly where to send people.
We had a gal who called us about every month, and she lived just east of the station. And all the shifts knew her. They did always stomach pain, same thing. And she was a professional gal, so we would see her, and she would, most of the time she was at work during the day, so we mostly saw her at night. She said, my stomach still hurts. One of the captains from our station had knee surgery and became a connector. And so he goes up into the alarm room, and that call comes in, and he says, but we knew the unit, the whole thing, name, oh, Jesus, this again. So he follows up with the crew the next day and says, hey, blah, blah, blah. So he goes and talks to this gal who keeps calling because of her stomach. And so she always goes to the hospital down the street. So he hooks her up, he gets her, and they go to the hospital together. And, because he does shit all day. He's at the alarm room. He says, I'm bored. So I go pick Mary up, and we go to county, and I go in and I talk to a caseworker there. And I we had been on her like 23 times in 6 months, something like that, a lot. And she had serious issues. I mean, she wasn't making this up. It wasn't people hiding in her vents. And I said, yeah, we did surgery on her 2.5 years ago for this. Well, she had scarring in her intestines, and that they left something in her, like a sponge or some goddamn thing, and it was causing her pain. And they said, oh my God. And so they fixed it. It was the connector saved that woman's life, perhaps. I mean, because the hospital wasn't going to do anything about it. It was the same thing. I got a stomach ache. Take this. Go home. Wow.
Yeah. So you made me think of something. So the other good part about a program like that is that in Houston we did that, where we identified what do we call them? Return callers or
frequent flyers.
Frequent flyers. Okay.
Return customers.
Yeah, return customers.
Yeah.
And anyway,
system abusers is what we would call them after a certain time.
We were able to find that in 24 addresses or 23 addresses in a year, there was 400 calls. It's amazing, right?
Yes.
Just from these, whether it was an apartment complex or whether it was a home, but there was 400 plus calls. And so we sent some people out to talk to those people that call 911 all the time and really try to help them out. Like, we're going to try to help you with your problem. And that was pretty successful. That worked out really well. But that's the other thing that CR folks will do for you is if you get them connected, if you get that customer help, that lady, she probably didn't call no more after she.
No, we never saw her again.
She didn't want to see you.
Yeah, well, and the fire department ended up fixing the hospital's thing. That is what happened.
Yeah.
And you think, why aren't you guys doing this? Like anybody at psych, we would sometimes we would just throw them on the LT and say it's going to be so much quicker. Just get on the thing. Yeah. Then we would march in the ER with them and say, this person needs their prescription refilled. Yeah. They said, we don't have that medicine here. It's in the building across the parking lot. Good luck. So we go over the building. It's locked. You can't get in. There's sliding doors.
No, I know
it's
that
a healthcare anthem.
I know that building.
So they come over. We said, this patient needs it. They have to schedule through the ER. No, we were just at the ER. Just a mean nurse. She ignored us, turned around, went in, locked the door. Kenny the Joker went and got the key to the door and started beating on it. And they didn't want an axe going through their door, so the doctor opened it. What do you want? Give this person a prescription. They took him in, gave him his prescription. So you had to force them to do their job. You're like, well, why are we doing this? Because it's the rules of the hospital. I'm going to get in trouble for this. Kenny says, better than what's going to happen.
So nowadays in Glendale, you could get your CR folks, and they would go do that for you.
Exactly.
And they would do it. They don't have an axe, but they got some really great skills that they can use.
That's the last thing you want is Kenny pounding on the thing with an axe. But I mean, you put us in a position where we're using the only tools we have.
Right.
Thank God they didn't give us bulletproof vest.
Well, it's a cornerstone of these programs, and it's something that Bruno says in customer service for the fire service is to de-victimize people as much as possible. And whether it is the person who's having to call 911 for their healthcare issues or somebody after a fire, we return control to their lives. They become a happier person, and that sometimes all they need is a resource and to get hooked up with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. We covered a lot of good stuff today on B-Shifter, this Leadership Thursday. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Terry. I'm calling this CR folks for Nick now.
All right. We'll get Nick taken care of.
Thank you. Yeah, I can use it.
He needs his medicine.
Damn it. Get him some medicine. Take me to the pharmacy.